They called me Omega, and I believed them. I believed I was the last, the least, the one who deserved nothing more than the scraps that fell from their tables, until a drowning pup and a king with amber eyes taught me that the forgotten ones are sometimes the most fiercely claimed. My name is Yara, though no one has spoken it with kindness since my grandmother Ivara closed her eyes for the last time 3 winters ago. She died whispering words I did not understand then, something about blood and forests and a promise made before I was born. I thought fever had taken her mind. Now I wonder if she was trying to prepare me for what I was always meant to become. I live in the ruins of the old mill at the edge of the village, where the river bends sharply and the water runs too fast for fishing. The roof has holes that let in rain and snow, and the walls groan when the wind blows from the northern mountains. No one else wanted this place. No one else wanted me. After my grandmother died and left no coin, no land, no family to vouch for me, I became what every village needs and despises in equal measure. The one who gathers herbs too deep in the forest. The one who washes linens in freezing water. The one who eats last, if there is anything left to eat at all. Omega, they called me. The final letter. The end of all things. I accepted the name because I had no strength left to fight it. I accepted the hunger because I knew no other way. I accepted the loneliness because I thought it was all I deserved. Then the flood came. It happened in early autumn, when the rains fell for 9 days without ceasing, and the river swelled beyond its banks. I watched from the mill as the water rose and churned, carrying branches and debris from the mountains. I should have been afraid for myself, but I felt nothing. There is a particular emptiness that comes from having nothing left to lose. On the 9th night, I heard a sound beneath the roar of the water. A cry, high and thin, almost swallowed by the storm. I told myself it was the wind. I told myself it was not my concern. But my grandmother's voice echoed in my memory, as it often did in moments when I tried to ignore my own heart. She used to say that the forest speaks to those who are willing to listen, and that turning away from a cry for help is the same as silencing your own soul. I took my lantern and walked to the riverbank. The water had caught a tangle of branches against the old dock posts, and there, struggling weakly in the debris, was a small white shape. At first I thought it was a lamb, swept away from some farm upstream. But when I waded into the freezing shallows and pulled the creature free, I saw the truth. It was a wolf pup, white as fresh snow, though her fur was matted with mud and riverweed. Her eyes were closed, her body limp, and I was certain she was dead. But then she breathed. One shallow, shuddering breath. I carried her back to the mill and wrapped her in the only blanket I owned. I held her against my chest and shared my warmth, though I had little enough of that to give. I fed her drops of water mixed with honey I had saved for trading. I did not sleep that night, or the next, keeping vigil over this tiny creature who had no reason to live but stubbornly refused to die. I named her Neve, for the snow she resembled, for the cold that had tried to claim her and failed. The villagers would have killed her if they knew. Wolves were the enemy here, feared and hated for generations. The hunters spoke of them as demons, as curses given fur and fang. They set traps in the forest and celebrated when they caught one, hanging the pelts on their doors like trophies of war. If they discovered I was sheltering a wolf, even a pup, they would not hesitate to destroy us both. So I kept her hidden. I kept her secret. I kept her alive on scraps and desperation and something that felt terrifyingly like love. Weeks passed. Neve grew stronger, her eyes opening to reveal a color I had never seen in any creature. Pale gold, almost amber, with a depth that seemed to hold centuries of knowing. She watched me with those eyes as I went about my meager existence, and I swore sometimes that she understood more than any animal should. When I spoke to her, she tilted her head as if listening. When I cried, she pressed her small body against mine and did not move until my tears had stopped. She became my reason to endure. Not for myself, but for her. But winter came early that year, and with it came a cold so brutal that the river froze solid and the snow buried the forest paths. My herb gathering became impossible. My washing work dried up as the village women kept to their warm hearths. The few coins I had saved disappeared into bread and firewood, and then there was nothing left. Neve needed food. She was growing, her appetite increasing, and I had nothing to give her. I chewed bark to quiet my own stomach, but I could not ask her to do the same. She was innocent. She had not chosen this life of poverty and hiding. She deserved better than I could provide. On the night of the full moon, when the cold was so fierce that my breath crystallized in the air, I made a decision that would change everything. I wrapped Neve in my shawl, holding her close to my chest where she could stay warm, and I walked to the village square. The communal hall blazed with light and noise. The hunters had returned from a successful expedition, bringing back deer and boar and the promise of full bellies for everyone who mattered. I could smell the roasting meat from outside, and my stomach clenched with a hunger so sharp it felt like a blade. I did not go to the front door. I knew better than that. I went to the back, where the kitchen scraps were thrown into barrels for the pigs. I knelt in the frozen mud and waited until one of the serving boys emerged with a bucket of bones and gristle. "Please," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "Any scraps for my pup. Anything you would throw away. She is so hungry." The boy looked at me with disgust and something that might have been pity. He did not answer, but he went back inside, and I allowed myself a moment of hope. Then the door opened again, and it was not the boy who emerged. It was Bronn, the leader of the hunters, a man whose cruelty was legendary even among cruel men. He was drunk, his face flushed with ale and triumph, and behind him came others, laughing at some joke I had not heard. He looked down at me kneeling in the filth, and his lip curled. "The Omega begs," he said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "What do you have there, girl? Show us." I clutched Neve tighter, but his men were already moving, grabbing my arms, forcing me to reveal what I held. When they saw the white pup, their laughter died. "A wolf," Bronn said, and his voice had gone cold. "You harbor a wolf in our village." "She is just a baby," I pleaded. "She is harmless. She would have died if I had not saved her." He struck me then, a backhanded blow that sent me sprawling into the mud. Neve tumbled from my arms, yelping in fear, and I scrambled to cover her with my body before they could hurt her too. "You want scraps?" Bronn said, picking up a bone from the slop barrel and throwing it into the filthiest part of the yard. "Go fetch it, Omega. Crawl like the animal you are." His men laughed. One of them kicked mud at me. Another suggested they kill the pup right there and add her pelt to their collection. I did not move. I could not. All I could do was curl around Neve and pray for it to end. And then the laughter stopped. I did not understand at first why the men had gone silent. Then I felt it. A presence, vast and ancient, pressing against the edges of my awareness like a storm about to break. The air grew colder, though I had not thought that possible. The torchlight flickered. From the darkness between the buildings, from the shadows that the firelight could not reach, eyes appeared. Amber eyes, glowing like embers, and then more, and more still, until the night itself seemed to be watching. The wolves had come. They emerged from the darkness like ghosts, white and gray and silver, their breath misting in the frozen air. There were dozens of them, more wolves than I had ever seen or imagined, and they moved with a silence that made the hunters reach for weapons they suddenly realized they had left inside. But it was not the pack that stole my breath. It was him. He was the largest wolf I had ever seen, white as moonlight on snow, with scars crossing his muzzle and shoulders that spoke of battles survived and enemies defeated. His eyes were the same amber gold as Neve's, and when they found mine, I felt something shift in my chest. Recognition, though we had never met. Understanding, though we had never spoken. the Alpha King. The hunters stumbled backward, their courage dissolving like morning frost. Even Braun, for all his bluster, had gone pale. These were not the wolves they trapped and killed and hung on their doors. These were something else entirely. Something older. Something that remembered when this land belonged to the forest, and the humans were the intruders. The Alpha King walked past the frozen hunters as if they did not exist. His eyes never left mine. He crossed the yard with a grace that belied his massive size, and when he reached me, he lowered his great head and touched his nose to Neve's trembling body. She whimpered and pressed against him, and I understood then. She was his. His daughter, lost in the flood, carried downstream to die. He had been searching for her all this time, following her scent through forest and field, and it had led him here. To me. To the Omega who had saved what he could not. He raised his head and looked at me again, and in his gaze I saw something I had never seen in any human eye. Not pity, not contempt. Respect. Gratitude. And beneath that, a question. I did not know how I understood him, but I did. He was asking if I would come with them. If I would leave this place that had given me nothing but pain and follow them into the forest that had always called to me in my dreams. I thought of my grandmother's dying words. I thought of the loneliness that had been my only companion for so long. I thought of Neve and how she had given me a reason to live when I had none. I rose from the mud, still holding the pup, and I stood before the Alpha King without fear. Yes, I whispered. Yes. He turned and walked toward the forest, and the pack parted to let him pass. I followed, my bare feet numb in the snow, my heart pounding with terror and hope in equal measure. Behind us, the hunters did not move. Perhaps they could not. Perhaps the Alpha King had willed them to stillness. I did not look back to find out. The forest swallowed us whole. I do not know how long we walked that night. Time moved strangely in the company of wolves, stretching and contracting like breath. The pack surrounded me, their bodies close enough to share warmth, their presence a protection I had never known. Neve had calmed in my arms, her small head resting against my shoulder, her amber eyes watching her father's back as he led us deeper into the wilderness. We came at last to a place I had never seen, though I had spent my whole life at the edge of this forest. A valley hidden between two ridges, where the snow fell softer and the wind could not reach. At its heart stood a great pine, ancient beyond measure. Its branches spread wide like the arms of a grandmother welcoming her children home. The wolves settled around the tree, some curling together for warmth, others keeping watch at the valley's edge. The Alpha King led me to a hollow beneath the roots, where the ground was dry and carpeted with shed fur and fallen needles. Rest, his eyes seemed to say. You are safe now. I should have been afraid. I should have questioned what was happening, why the wolves had accepted me, what they expected in return. But exhaustion claimed me before doubt could, and I slept more deeply than I had in years. Neve warm against my heart, the breath of the pack a lullaby around me. I dreamed of my grandmother. She stood in a clearing I did not recognize, younger than I had ever seen her, her hair dark and her eyes bright. She smiled when she saw me, and her voice was clear as spring water. You have found your way at last, she said. The blood remembers what the mind forgets. You are the last of our line, Yara, the last guardian. The wolves have waited so long for you to answer their call. I do not understand, I said. You will, she replied. Listen to the forest. Listen to your heart. They will teach you what I could not. She faded like mist in morning sun, but her warmth remained, and when I woke, I found tears on my cheeks and a certainty in my chest that had never been there before. The days that followed were a revelation. The pack accepted me as one of their own, teaching me their ways without words. The alpha female, a silver wolf with gentle eyes, showed me which roots were safe to eat and where the winter berries still clung to their branches. The younger wolves played with Neve, helping her grow strong, welcoming her back to the family she had been born into. And the Alpha King watched. Always he watched, his amber eyes following my movements, assessing, considering. I felt his gaze like a touch, and though it should have unnerved me, it did not. There was no judgment in his watching, only patience, only waiting. Spring came slowly to the hidden valley, melting the snow and coaxing green shoots from the frozen earth. I had changed in the months since the wolves had claimed me. My body was stronger, fed by the forest's bounty and the pack's shared hunting. My mind was clearer, freed from the constant fear and shame that had clouded it for so long. And my heart, my wounded and wary heart, had begun to heal. But the world outside had not forgotten me. Aldrich found me on a morning when the mist hung low between the trees. He was the miller's son, the only person in the village who had ever shown me kindness, leaving bread where I would find it, warning me when bronze hunters came too close. He had tracked me for weeks, he said, following signs so faint that only someone who truly wanted to find me could have read them. "They say you are dead," he told me, his eyes wide as he took in the wolves lounging nearby, seemingly unconcerned by his presence. "Braun tells everyone that the demons took you, that you were a witch who summoned them. He uses the story to justify a great hunt. He means to kill them all, Yara. Every wolf in the forest." I felt the Alpha King's presence before I saw him, his massive form materializing from the mist like a spirit taking shape. Aldrich stumbled backward, his hand going to the knife at his belt, but I stepped between them. "He will not hurt you," I said. "He knows you are not our enemy." "Our enemy," Aldrich repeated, and I heard the wonder in his voice. "You speak as if you are one of them now." "I am," I said, and the truth of it rang through me like a bell. "I am their guardian, as my grandmother was, and her mother before her. The bond between wolves and humans was broken long ago, but I am here to mend it. I am here to protect them." Aldrich looked at me for a long moment, then at the Alpha King, then back at me. "I always knew you were different," he said quietly. "I just never understood how." He left with a promise to warn me when the hunters came, and they came sooner than I had feared. 3 days later, the forest erupted with the sounds of horns and hounds and men hungry for blood. Braun had gathered every able body in the village, arming them with spears and bows, filling their heads with tales of demons and curses, and the glory that would come from wiping the wolves from the earth forever. The pack gathered in the valley, the old and young and all between, their eyes reflecting fear for the first time since I had known them. They were many, but the hunters were more, and they had weapons the wolves could not match. The Alpha King stood at the valley's entrance, his scarred body tense, his amber eyes fixed on the trees where the enemy approached. He would fight, I knew. He would die defending his pack if he must, but he should not have to. I walked to his side and placed my hand on his shoulder, feeling the coarse fur, the warmth of life beneath it, the heart that beat as true as any human heart I had known. "Let me try," I said. "Let me speak to them." He looked at me, and in his eyes I saw doubt and hope warring. Then he stepped aside. I walked out of the valley and into the path of the hunters. They stopped when they saw me. This girl they had called Omega. This creature they had believed dead or worse. I was not the same girl who had knelt in the mud begging for scraps. I stood straight, my eyes clear, my voice steady when I spoke. "There will be no hunt today," I said. "Not here. Not ever again." Braun laughed, but the sound was hollow. He pushed to the front of the crowd, his bow in hand, an arrow nocked and ready. "You think you can stop us?" he said. "You, the weakest and most worthless creature the village ever produced." I smiled, and something in my smile made him falter. "I am not weak," I said. "I never was. You called me Omega because you thought it meant last, least, lowest. But Omega means something else too. It means the end, the completion. the one who holds everything together. I raised my hands, and the words my grandmother had whispered on her deathbed rose to my lips unbidden. They were old words, older than the village, older than the forest itself, and they carried a power that I had not known I possessed until that moment. The hunters froze, not from magic that bound their bodies, but from something deeper. They saw me, truly saw me, and in my eyes they saw the forest looking back. They saw the generations of guardians who had kept the balance between human and wild. They saw the truth that their fear had hidden from them for so long. "Wolves are not your enemy," I said. "They never were. They are part of this land as you are, as I am. We can live together, or we can destroy each other, but I will not let you choose destruction." For a long moment, no one moved. Then Aldrich stepped forward, laying down his spear. "She speaks the truth," he said. "I have seen the wolves with her. They are not demons. They are just trying to survive, same as us." One by one, others followed. Not all. Braun and his closest men held their weapons still, their faces twisted with hatred. But they were outnumbered now, and they knew it. "This is not over," Braun spat, but he was already retreating, his followers melting away behind him. I watched them go, and I felt no triumph. Only a weary hope. The Alpha King appeared at my side, and for the first time, he pressed his great head against my hand in a gesture that needed no translation. Gratitude, acceptance, welcome. I returned to the valley with the pack at my heels, and I knew that my place in the world had finally been found. Years have passed since that day. The village and the forest have learned an uneasy peace, maintained by my presence and the quiet authority of the Alpha King. I walk between both worlds now, human and wild, belonging fully to neither and somehow to both. Neve has grown into a beautiful wolf, her white coat gleaming, her amber eyes bright with intelligence. She runs with the pack but returns to me each night, sleeping at my side as she did when she was a pup who had almost drowned. She is the daughter I will never have, the bond that changed my destiny. And the Alpha King, my protector, my teacher, my friend. He grows old, his muzzle silver now, his step slower than it was, but his eyes still hold that ancient knowing, and when he looks at me, I see reflected there the woman I have become. Not Omega, not last or least or lowest. Guardian, keeper of the bond, the one who remains. My grandmother was right. The blood remembers what the mind forgets. I was never meant for the village, for the scraps and the scorn and the endless small cruelties. I was meant for the forest, for the wolves, for this life that found me when I had given up on finding anything at all. Sometimes I return to the old mill, just to remember. I stand in the ruins where I once starved and shivered and believed I deserved nothing more. I think of the girl who knelt in the mud asking for scraps for her pup, and I want to reach back through time and tell her what I know now. You are not the end of all things, I would say. You are the beginning. You are the bridge. You are exactly where you need to be, even when it hurts. Especially when it hurts. The forest whispers around me, welcoming me home. Neve presses against my leg, and in the distance, I hear the Alpha King's howl rising toward the moon. I close my eyes and howl with him, my voice joining his, human and wolf becoming one sound, one song, one unbroken promise that will echo through these woods long after we are gone. I was the Omega, the last, the least. Now I am the guardian, the keeper, the claimed, and I am finally, beautifully, completely home.